Bonjour French 1. This is your notes video all about possessive adjectives for section 3.2. Basically, we're just going to go down the list of the 4 questions on your paper and kind of work through some different examples to explain exactly what possessive adjectives are and how they work in the French language. So the first thing you kind of need to know is how it actually works in the English language, because it's kind of good to be able to compare the two. So for what are possessive adjectives in the English language, basically they're words that show that someone owns something, such as the words my, your, his, her, our, or their. And they work just the same in the French language as far as they show ownership in the French language as well. It's just a matter of memorizing different words, because obviously the French don't actually use the word my, your, his, her, and so on. So what we have here are your actual possessive adjectives in French, and just like our other kinds of articles and teeny tiny words in the French language, there's more than one version of each word. So whereas in the English language, if I own something and I want to say that it's my book or whatever the item might be, I just use the word my, whether it's my book or my mom or my table, whether it's a person, whether it's an object, whether that object in the French language be considered to be masculine or feminine, the word is my no matter what if I own it in the English language. But in the French language, which word for my you use has to do with what is being owned. If you're talking about, my something that's masculine, such as my book, you would use mon livre. If you're talking about my something feminine, such as my chair, you would say ma chaise. And if you're talking about my something plural, such as my books or my chairs, you would say mes livres or mes chaises. So basically there's 3 different versions of the word my, and just like the note says down here, you choose whether to use the masculine, feminine, or plural version based on what is being owned. It's not about whether I myself am a boy, a girl, or somehow plural by having multiple personalities. It's about whether the item that I'm talking about owning is masculine, feminine, or plural. The only other thing I need to kind of introduce to you about this chart before we go any further is this last column over here. It just points out that usually if you're using the word my, the subject of your sentence is je or I, because you say I have my whatever. Same thing happens here. Usually use the word your whenever you are the subject of the sentence. Do you have your book? So it's just kind of cluing you in a little bit and making you aware. I know you know this in the English language, that if you're talking about how he has something, then it's his. But in the French language, sometimes we forget about that because we're focusing so much on what the subject pronouns mean or what the possessive adjective means and things like that. Now, having said all of that, the reason why this is coming up in this section isn't because we talk a lot about books and chairs. It's because we're talking about family members. So keep in mind when you're talking about masculine, feminine, or plural, and we'll go ahead and move down to your for this example. If you wanted to say your something masculine, such as your dad, you would say ton père. If you want to say your something feminine, such as your mom, which is always a fun phrase to say, you would say ta mère, because mom is feminine. And if you wanted to say your parents and make it plural, it would be tes parents. Now, the one that's probably the most confusing for people is this row right here on the chart, and that's because each of these 3 words means all of these 3 words. So this isn't a one-for-one comparison. This isn't the word his, this isn't the word her, and this isn't the word its. Son means his, her, or its for something masculine. So if you say son père for dad, again, like we did on the last example, you would be saying either his dad, son père could also mean her dad, or son père could also mean its dad. So be careful. Again, it's about what is being owned and whether that person or object is masculine or feminine, and not about whether it's a boy owning it or a girl owning it and things like that. So sa mère would mean his mom, because mom is feminine, we have to use sa. It would also mean her mom, and it would also mean its mom. And ses parents would mean his parents, it would also mean her parents, and it would also mean its parents. So be very careful on those. Once you get down into the lower sections of the chart, you'll notice that the word our only has one version for singular, whether it's masculine or feminine, and then a separate version for plural. So whether it's our dad, notre père, or our mom, notre mère, the word is notre either way, because whether it's masculine or feminine does not matter. That's why these 2 boxes are joined on this one. However, if you want to say our parents and talk about something plural, it is nos parents. This is an interesting one. By the way, this is not a real word in the English language. It's just something I made up to help my French students. Basically, it's when something belongs to y'all. So if you want to say y'all's dad, which again is not a correct word in the English language, you would say votre père. If you want to say your all's mom, you would say votre mère. And if you want to say your all's parents, you would say vos parents. And then finally, if you wanted to say their dad or their mom, the word there is the same, whether it's a boy or girl, they're a masculine or feminine item, you would say leur père for their dad and leur mère for their mom. And if you wanted to say their parents, you would say leurs parents. Sounds the same, but it would actually have an S on it at the end. Now, I know this is all kind of fuzzy when you first see the chart and it doesn't make much sense, so let me actually give you a couple of examples here. Keep that chart handy. I know it's right above your paper here, but you might have to reference it back as we work through these examples. Basically, the way you use these in French is when you have a word that you want to use, such as my, you need to think about the word that comes after the word my and decide whether it's a masculine word, a feminine word, or a plural word so that you choose the appropriate form of my. So if you wanted to say something like, it's my mom, doesn't matter who you are and whether you're masculine, feminine, or somehow plural. Instead, you have to think about the fact that mom is feminine, and you say things like, c'est ma mère. Because mom is feminine, you would use the feminine form of my to say, it's my mom. So your next example asks you about the word for my parents. So again, it has nothing to do with who you are. If you want to say, here are my parents, you have to notice that parents is plural. Oop, this should be my. There's a typo here. Hope you didn't write it down yet. There we go. If you want to say it's my parents, the word my changes from this sentence to this sentence because parents is plural. So the plural form of my is mes. So voici mes parents, there are my parents. The next example is probably the most confusing one for people because they see the word his and then they see the feminine word there and they kind of get confused. But remember, the word his is either son, sa, or se. When you go to the his row on your chart, it's either going to be son, sa, or se based on the next word, as in whether it's his masculine item or his feminine item or his plural items. So if we are saying his mom, the word his is either son, sa, or se, and because mom is feminine, we're going to use sa to say here is his mom. Final example, if you wanted to say something like these are our parents, the word our is either notre or nos. You can look it up on your chart right there. In order to know whether to use the word notre or nos for the word our, you have to look at what is being owned. It's our parents. Parents is plural. So ce sont nos parents is these are our parents. Last thing I want to point out is most people, if they have the chart in front of them, are actually able to figure these out once they've had a little bit of practice and had, a little bit of examples to work through. And then the problem becomes actually knowing how to pronounce these words and also knowing them in order so that you have them memorized because, come testing day, you won't actually be able to use your chart during the test. So what I have for you, just like we always do in this class, is of course a lovely song. This is to the tune of Jingle Bells. You'll notice it's basically the chart in order. There are a couple of extra words here to make it fit the song that have nothing to do with the actual possessive adjective chart at all. But they're there just to make it actually fit with the beat of the song. Now please do not think that this song has deep, meaningful undertones to it. You can't sing it to your boyfriend or girlfriend and win their heart. You're literally just singing my, your, his, her, it's, his, her, it's, our, your alls is there, and there. It's that, which makes no sense at all. But if it gets stuck in your head, then you have your forms of your possessive adjectives in your head in the order of my, your, his, her, our, your alls is theirs, and then you have your masculine, your feminine, and your plural, just like your chart. So here's how the song goes. Again, apologies for the poor singing voice demonstrating it for you. We will practice it together in class. The song goes, mon maman, ton tate, son ça, c'est la la. Notre, no, votre, vos, leur, et leur, c'est ça. Hey. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up your video notes for today because how can you top that song?